Yeah. Go ahead, take it. Yeah, he forgot it. And it's got his... There you go. Got it? Oh, careful, careful. Yeah, there we go. That's awesome. All right. Thank you on behalf of a dutiful younger sister. Yeah, and you can tell him that between the two of you, on this occasion, you possess far greater memory. Although he is taking exams, so that's a little bit harder to... Yeah, so we'll cut him some slack. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, have your notes out. We're going to dive right back into the history of France and how the history of France had been impacted by the history of the early United States, and how the history of France is in itself going to therefore go back across the Atlantic and impact Latin America. Pretty much all the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking, bless you, Portuguese-speaking places in the Americas. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of notes for you today. I would say, oh my gosh, totally, have this little packet thing out that I gave you because the payoff is going to be huge. Sometimes I imagine it feels like, oh gosh, wow, we hardly went through any of these different bullet points. Today, we're going to go through, on page 3, look on page 3. Shh. We're going to be going through the first bullet point, second bullet point, third bullet point, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th. I think we're going to get through most of them. Thank you. Okay? Yeah, because these ones, it's kind of like, it's going to come from me. Okay? And some slides that I have on here is going to come from me. And we will come close to finishing it up. I dare say, because I looked at, and I can always get a sense of, like, as we get closer to the end of a unit, like how much more time we really need. I didn't think I was going to be able to finish up this unit and give you a decent review for the next test and have the test on Friday. Because you would have been really in shock. You're like, oh my gosh, the test on Friday? Take a look at the board there. The test is on Wednesday. The first day you guys come back in to see me after the weekend. So you will have time over the weekend and Tuesday night next week to study for this test, which is 80 points. There's a lot of stuff in there. Okay, matching, true, false. Okay? And so that's going to be on Wednesday, and then after that we'll do our very last unit that will take us to the end of the year, which is, I don't know, when do we finish? Like sometime in August? It feels that way sometimes. June, yeah. The study guide is the handout that I gave you initially. Okay? Yeah, you know, it's funny, Ty, because I have, like, juniors asking me the same question. I'm like, dude, we've been doing the same thing pretty much since the 9th grade. I give you a study guide at the beginning of the unit, and we use that as we go through and write out the notes. And then that's probably the most helpful thing to go through to make sure you know all the different key components. So if you don't know something, then you need to look through your notes. Obviously, you need to look through your notes. When is it best to look through your notes? Like just at the last minute or like on a regular basis? Probably on a regular basis, because then it'll stick a little bit better. But if you notice, Ty, that there's something missing or so forth, then you can kind of check in with other people. Raise your hand if you know somebody in here that really probably takes pretty darn good notes. Okay? And that may even be yourself, too. Okay? That is a key component. When we had more time in the past, I would actually, because somebody was asking, I would actually collect notes and look at them and grade them and so forth. But the real kicker is to know your notes. And if you don't have very good notes or you miss something and so forth, you miss something now, you can, this is working now, so you can watch it. In the past, though, you can get notes from other people. And sometimes, raise your hand if you know somebody in here that takes better notes than you. Okay, go ahead and point. Okay, okay, all right. Is it okay to take advantage of other people's notes when you're getting ready? Yes, okay, yes. And I don't really organize this, but I've noticed sometimes, like among my older grade levels, sometimes they'll put together, some students will throw together Quizlets and so forth. They'll put together outlines and things like that. The key thing I'm looking for you is to perform. On the day of the test, get as many questions as you possibly can right, because that's going to be a big, big component of your semester grade. You guys already are in a good position because I can talk very positively about you. I gave you a big assignment. Your history film critique, by and large, y'all did great. And that's good points right there in the bank. I think I'm waiting for one more. It's going to be coming up here pretty soon, okay? And then we'll have everyone done. Saw a hand? Yeah. ISAT schedule is going to be taking place, whatever, when the ISAT schedule is taking place, it's pretty much in the morning. And it's like a couple of hours dedicated for ISATs, and then you have like the rest of your classes that day for a little bit shorter, each of them a little bit shorter. So, your first period class on an A day, I think starts at like 9 something on the day that we have ISATs. Does that make sense? So anyway, that's how that'll work. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around it. Like today, I had seniors coming in here, and some of them were a little distracted, right? And so they were finishing up. Yeah, they were finishing up their IB history, which we'd been working on with them this year, last year. Actually, even gave them a unit when they were in the 10th grade. You guys have had any exposure to IB history? Yeah, this unit right here, right now. Yeah, there were 2. In fact, check this out. Here we go. Here's the IB history exam. Here are 2 questions that are from the unit that we're doing right now. How about this one? Oh, you can't do the first one because I haven't covered it yet. Discuss the impact of military campaigns, battles on the outcome of 2 Latin American independence processes. You're like, you're going to know, you don't know anything right now because we haven't done any Latin American ones. We've done the United States one. Okay, and then here's another one. Independence established new and effective trade relations discussed with reference to 2 societies in the Americas. I'm like, I don't know, that's kind of a weird one. The next 2 questions are going to be from the unit we're going to be doing next. If we were to continue on in a normal year, we'd be able to get through all the stuff I normally do with the Civil War. Next year, in 10th grade, we'll do, as part of government, because that's the required course, we'll do an IB history unit on the civil rights movement. Raise your hand if you can name one person in the civil rights movement. That's easy. Raise your hand if you can name 2 people in the American civil rights movement, i.e. somebody else besides Martin Luther King Jr. You can do somebody else besides? Hold on. Don't say it. All right, fine. Raise your hand if you can name somebody else besides Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Raise your hand if you knew who Malcolm X was. You're going to learn more about Malcolm X. Raise your hand if you can identify somebody else. Rosa Parks. Very good. All right. You guys you heard of Rosa Parks? Very well known. Know anybody besides Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, or Martin Luther King Jr.? You're doing really well so far. You heard of John Lewis? Yes? Excellent. Who's Emmett Till? Was he a big civil rights marcher and did everything like that? Yeah, he was some young guy that was broke the rules of white-dominated society in the Deep South and ended up getting killed. The 2 guys that killed him, 2 white guys that killed him, they were tried and not convicted, found not guilty by an all-white jury. Oh my God, yeah. But Emmett Till's uncle testified against the white guys in open court in the Deep South and ultimately found it really wasn't safe for him to live there, so he moved out of the community, and it helped galvanize the African-American community in the 1950s to be like, this has got to, stop. So Emmett Till was a kid whose untimely death, at about your age, helped to move the civil rights movement forward. You guys know who Rosa Parks was, right? Who was Rosa Parks? She sat on the front of the bus in the white section, yeah. And then when she was told to move under law, she was like, I'm not going to, so she got arrested. And then they had a bus boycott, and anyway, boom, boom, boom. You know who helped organize the bus boycott in Rosa Parks' community? Besides Rosa Parks? Martin Luther King Jr., a very young pastor that had just come over to Alabama from where he grew up in Georgia. Okay, so anyway, yes? Not the civil rights movement, but about 100 years earlier, helping African-American slaves. And if you never watched that movie, Tubman, I'd highly recommend that one. So anyway, we've got for you a whole bunch of history. And here is the difficulty. I really worked that little clicker thing, oh my gosh, and then it just died yesterday. So I had to order another one because they didn't have them in the stores, at least not decently priced ones. So I've got one coming in on Friday, probably after school. So I'm going to be over here clicking, and so forth. You guys okay with that? Yeah. All right? Thank you. Yeah, you can still hear me, and you can still take notes. You're not going to have to move anywhere. So let's go back to where we were. Let's go back to what we know. In what year, Vinny, did the American Revolution start? What was the year of the first battle? Lexington and Concord, just outside of Boston. 19, yeah. I need more than just 17. We got the 17 part pretty clear on that one. You're right on the 17. We'll give them the 17. What decade? Not the 60s. 70? 75. Yeah, 75. Remember the battle, the war essentially started before. Ty, what was the year that the Declaration of Independence was signed? 1776. Yeah, you guys remember that if we had more time to show you that really crazy musical. You'd be like, oh my gosh. And what year did George Washington beat General Cornwallis in the critical Battle of Yorktown? I'll give you a clue. It was within about 5 years or so from the Declaration of Independence. Battle of Yorktown. Where the world was turned upside down. 1781. What year did the British sign the treaty surrendering, the Treaty of Paris? I'll give you a clue. It was within 2 years after the Battle of Yorktown. 1783. Very good. All right, so 1783. Very good. When was the French Revolution get started? So what we did last time. Give you a clue. It was also in the 80s, near the end. Very good. There we go. So, just to recap. You guys ready? Follow along here because we're going to be moving fast and then we're going to jump back across the Atlantic. You ready? The French Revolution started in 1789. Raise your hand. I'll take a volunteer. If you can give me, what were some of the key causes behind the French Revolution? Go for it.
Incompetence.
Okay. Elaborate.
King Louis was incompetent.
King Louis the what?
The fifth.
16th, yeah? It's okay. 16th. Okay. You're saying he's incompetent. What's going on?
He is unwilling to negotiate with the nobility of his country.
What was his big problem? What was his big problem, Garrett, to begin with, that he was even in this negotiation with the nobles? This is all recap, so you should know this. This is like reviewing your notes. He didn't want to give up power. Well, so why was he having to give up power and so forth? What was the big problem there? He helped the Americans win the American Revolution, right? You have that in your American Revolution notes. Woohoo, France, Lafayette, Rochambeau, Cardinal Count de Grasse. Yes? Why? When the French helped us win, what was bad about that? If you buy a car, do you feel... Debt, yes, exactly, debt. D-E-B-T, debt. You owe a bunch of money. It's like, woohoo, I just finished college. Oh, I can go and now pay off my student loans. Which hopefully aren't going to be too many if you set up things just right and so forth and so on. Yay, woohoo, we just helped the Americans win the American Revolution. Now I've got to pay off my debt. Wow, have the nobles been paying any taxes? No. Can we tax the poor even more? No. You can tax them until they starve to death, and that's no good because how much taxes can a dead person pay? Yeah, not too much. So they work with, the king's working with the nobles, and the nobles are like, we'll be willing to pay some taxes if we can have what? Some power. Good. Did that go through? Who seemed to back away from that deal? The king. Very good. The king. And then all kinds of weird stuff was taking place. Remember we had the Battle of Bastille where like citizens in the city of Paris were like, let's attack that building because then the king is going to be trying to like, turn things back the way things were before. And they achieved power because they took over the thing. That worked out pretty bad for the head of the guy at the Bastille, didn't it? On retrospect, maybe he should have just like, come on in. Oh, tell me about this. Make sure you have this in your notes. If you don't already, write this in. The French Revolution turned out to be just a hot mess. Okay? By comparison, the American Revolution turned out fairly predictable. It's kind of like, who started it? Actually, you guys, Second Continental Congress, started it. Who was left in control of the United States after the war was over? You guys. Okay? Who started the French Revolution? This group of people, and that group of people, and that group of people. Did the king survive? No, he's dead. Other nobility? No, they're dead. Other people leading the revolution? No, they're dead. It's crazy. They literally call it, I don't think I identified this, the Reign of Terror. And that's like the Reign of Terror, as in R-A-I-N. The Reign, or if you want to spell it phonetically, Reagan. Okay? R-E-I-G-N. There was a time during that French Revolutionary period, after you got past 1789 into the early 1790s, where it was kind of like, if somebody could persuade enough people that you were an enemy of the revolution, they'd grab you and take you to the nearest guillotine to cut your head off. Yeah, exactly. Guillotine, yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And remember what the other countries did? Here's France. When that reign of terror was taking place, and you got people killing nobles, and the king's wife, the queen. And what did the other outlying countries do? Did they sit around and go, I hope that doesn't spread to us? Yeah, they thought that. But what did they do? What did they do, Abby? They helped the reign of terror. They helped all these radicals that were like trying to kill kings and nobles and so forth. Exactly, yes, they attacked. Okay, do you got that? They attacked. Did they conquer France? No. France fought back. France defeated them. And who rose to the top of all the chaos in France as the leader of France fighting for the people of France? Napoleon, Napoleon, Napoleon. Got that? Okay. In the early 1800s, Napoleon established control over France. We saw this last time, right? Here's the map. Look at this. And particularly look at here. Spain. In fact, write this down. 1808. In the year 1808, Napoleon conquers Spain. It's one of his many conquests. And ultimately, we know this because we actually did get to the end of Napoleon last time. He is going to end. He's actually going to end twice. But in 1808, Napoleon, at great difficulty, mind you, conquers Spain. And he will remove the king of Spain and put his nephew, I think, or maybe it's his brother, Joseph Napoleon.
I believe that's his brother, yeah.
Yeah, and puts him as like the king of Spain. You know, my brother's the king of Spain, but he knows who's really in charge. I'm in charge. I'm Napoleon Bonaparte, yeah.
Is that the Peninsular Campaign?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And the first...
Because you did the Battle of Waterloo, right, for your film?
Yeah, but I
yeah.
also, I do a lot of Napoleon and stuff. But,
There you go.
But the first coalition was, I don't know. Never mind, stupid question.
It's okay. Do you guys have to know what Eric knows in order for the test? Not everything, okay? The basics, yeah, okay? Because there is a lot of craziness going on there. In sum, Napoleon, did he conquer Italy? Yes. Did he conquer Prussia, in the German-speaking area in the northern part of Europe? Yes. Did he conquer Austria? Yes. And what did he get from Austria? What did he want, and what did he get? He wanted a person. What kind of a person? An 18-year-old. Wow, that's putting it bluntly. He's like, why are you asking me? He wanted a girl. Was any girl okay? He wanted a Habsburg, a princess. Now here's the deal. Write this down because I want you to clarify this because as we go into what's going on here, this is a really weird thing. Because when Napoleon started out, make sure you write this down. Napoleon was like, I'm for the French Republic. I'm for France being of the people, a government for the people. So even though he's like a great military leader, he's like, I'm doing this for the people. Kind of like George Washington. People wanted George Washington to be king. What did George say? No, you don't need a king. And he was like, people wanted George Washington to be president. He's like, was he willing to be president? Yes. But only for 8 years. And he's like, come on, you guys. Napoleon is like fighting for France, for the Republic. But make sure you have this, and I think you do. Ultimately, was he enamored with the idea of like, I don't know, being a king or maybe even an emperor would be pretty cool? Did he do it? He did it. And who did he, Carson, who did he marry? Did he marry just his original wife? Did he stay with his original wife, Josephine? No. He was happy with Josephine, but what was the problem there? She was not Habsburg and she had no child. I think that was the critical thing. Just kind of like we saw with Henry VIII and his first wife. They had a girl and they're like, oh, we have to have a boy, oh, whatever. So Napoleon gets, here we go. He gets Marie. Yes, I think she was like 18 years and so forth. And they had a child, and he's going to be the heir. He's going to rule France and so forth. So how did it all fall apart? Reese, how did it all fall apart? He's Napoleon. He's got a wife. He's got a kid. He's got like most of the continent of Europe. Go ahead, Reese, tell me. What happened? Oh, just wants Russia. Yakov, can people just like want Russia and have it? Good luck with that. I mean, in history, what are the only group of people, we talked about this at the very beginning of the school year, what was the only group of people that conquered Russia entirely? The Mongols. Write it down. No, okay, enough. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I mean, like, comparatively, I mean, like, they did some big damage. But here, put this down. We know this. We covered this last time. Did Napoleon defeat Russia in 1812 when he invaded? No. Here's one for you. See if you know this one. Actually, give me the name of a man in the 20th century, that would be the 1900s, who set out with his massive army to attack Russia, at that time, hint, hint, known as Soviet Union. Raise your hand if you can tell me what man attempted to conquer Soviet Union but was stopped by, here, we'll use a George Orwell Animal Farm character, Napoleon. Not Snowball. Snowball was Trotsky. He got kicked out. Napoleon was in charge, right? And who is Napoleon in real history? Stalin. His name means steel. Who tried to defeat Stalin? It was Hitler, yeah. Hitler, and here's the deal. I mean, actually, if you look at the map before Hitler attacked the Soviet Union, Russia, he conquered France. He had conquered all these different areas. Everyone had been defeated or was neutral except for Britain, and they were protected by their navy, yada, 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 just like back here in Napoleonic times. But Hitler decided, I'm going to attack Russia. I'm going to do what Napoleon set out to do but failed to do. And did Hitler do it? No, he failed to do it as well. Would Hitler be sent off to some little island to spend out the rest of his days? No, he blew his brains out in a bunker just as the Russians have occupied Berlin near the end of World War II. Okay? Did Napoleon kill himself? No. Here's Napoleon. Okay? This is where we were kind of rushing a little bit at the end. Here's his army going into Russia, gets to Moscow, conquers it, but then it's cold and has to make a retreat, and his army disappears. There he is in the cold. He gets sent to little tiny Elba. Take a look at the map here. Little teeny tiny Elba, which is just off the coast of Italy, danger. If you're going to put somebody in jail, make sure they're well guarded so they don't just get on a boat and head back to southern France. And get this, this is always amazing. If Napoleon, who led France to victory and then massive defeat, shows up in France and says, let's do it again. How many of you guys, if you were in France, would be like, yeah, I'm going to join you? But enough did. And he got control of France again for like 100 days. You can write that. Napoleon 2.0, 100 days. And he gets his army, and he finds that his army is going to be soon fighting Prussian armies. I think the Russians were in there too. I always forget which ones were there. You know. Was it the Prussians were there, the Russians, and the British?
Definitely
Austrians?
The British, but I think, yeah, also the Austrians, but I don't know if the Russians even, like...
They got there yet?
Because to be fair, they'd already, I'm pretty sure Prussia had already given, like, Prussia had already given, like, concessions of, like, Poland to Russia.
They're all ganged up on Napoleon. And I mean, some of the guys are like, we got this. Did Napoleon win the final battle that he was involved in, the Battle of Waterloo? No, he was captured. Okay? He was defeated, and he was captured, and the British are like, we're going to take charge of him now. Take a look at the map here. When he is defeated, there he is, raising an army in France. Woohoo! Let's go fight for France. Woohoo! And he loses 1815. You can write that down. That's the Battle of Waterloo. Okay? These dates are going to be critical because these events in Europe are going to impact what's going to be taking place in the Americas. That's why we really focus on kind of establishing the framework. So he loses, he's captured. Look at this. Here we go. St. Helena was a rocky island naval outpost for the British in the South Atlantic. Napoleon was shipped to that prison along with some other people in his family or some of his servants, and they're like, oh, we're never going to escape from here. And it says right there, I mean, he wrote for a while, he sat around, he did this, and then he died in 1821. Kind of a defeated guy. In fact, it's interesting, as he was reflecting, he's like, wow, I should have been like Washington. I should have taken all the acclaim for all the victories and handed power back over. But he was so full of himself, he's like, I'm destined. It's my star. I'm going to be the greatest one forever. And he ultimately failed. But he's a huge, huge person in history. So if you're George Orwell and you're writing like an Animal Farm thing and so forth, and you're trying to come up with a fictional name for some totalitarian pig, you go with Napoleon.
Did he actually say he wished he was more like Washington?
Yeah. He wrote that. He said, I should have been like Washington. I should have been like Washington. That's why our Washington's a really, really good guy. Let's give some credit to the guy. He had massive military victories. How many people in history with massive military victories just walk away from power? Not a lot. Some of them, they're like, hey, I got all this power because I had this victory and everyone likes me so much. Maybe I should just do what they're telling me to do and rule over all y'all. But Washington actually put his words into action. He says, I fought the American Revolution for principles like the people get a rule. In fact, I want you to write this word down. You ready? In America, we created what? A monarchy or a republic? Republic. Write this down. Republic. Okay? So the idea of republicanism, that word, small r, republicanism, does it have to do with Donald Trump or George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush? Not necessarily. They were leaders of the Republican Party. Okay? A republic is all about, write this down, democracy. Freedom's important too. But democracy as in who gets to rule and vote. The people. Okay? So democracy, the idea of democratic rule, is that just singular to Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton? No, they just happen to be leaders of the Democratic Party. And in fact, just to mess with you even more, because you're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Hansen's using Republican and Democratic, and now I'm going to throw in another word. Write this down. Liberal. Liberal. And you're like, How many guys are like, I have positive thoughts when I hear the word liberal? How many guys have negative thoughts when you hear the word liberal? All right, write this down positively. Okay, this is a positive use of the word liberal, and it fits. Okay, liberal in its earliest connotation simply means no. Let me do the teaching. Okay, all right, it's okay. No, nice try. Nice try. Libertarian is like freedom, and it's not completely divorced. Here we go. All right, here we go.
Don't worry about it. Okay.
I'm not going to. Here we go. Liberal means basically in favor of democracy, letting the people rule. So sometimes you'll hear people use it in the connotation of, I'm in favor of liberal democracy. And it doesn't mean in that context, it doesn't mean like, more taxes or more government programs or, whatever, things like that. I mean, it's one of those words that's been used over time, and it's kind of changed a little bit over time. And that's so, you know, when you read like sort of academic things or historical things, like I'm talking about here, liberal democracy. Who was in favor of liberal democracy? George Washington, ultimately, or Napoleon? More George Washington. But put this down, because this is going to be important. Once you've gone with a bit of liberal democracy and so forth, can you ever go back to a full-on king is in charge absolute monarchy? No. In fact, write this down. In France, when they put the king back in, after Napoleon was defeated, by the way, he ran away when Napoleon returned, and then he came back after Napoleon was defeated again. When they put the king back in there in France, he was limited. Who else do you suppose in France was going to be like saying, hey, king, you need to work with us to make sure that we're all on the same page? A lot of the nobles in France. And as time went on, more and more people in France. Does that make sense? Okay? More and more people are going to have that. Yeah.
This might be a little bit more like related to like we were talking about republic. Is a republic like is republic implicit of like laissez-faire or like?
That's a separate question you can ask. How much the government is going to be involved? When you pledge allegiance, you guys pledge allegiance right there in first period. Yeah, it's a state requirement. Not that you have to do it, but it's a state requirement that the school offer that in a public school. When you pledge allegiance, I've got it right here. You pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. Okay? So the idea simply is, and to the concept of an elected government. Okay? Right? Whether you elect Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or Green Party or Socialist or who knows what. Okay? Question? No, you just had your pencil up. All right, now, check this, because dates are going to be important as we go through this. As all this craziness is going on from like 1789, the beginning of the French Revolution, to Napoleon being packed away in 1815, okay? During that time period, let's look and see what's happening in other parts. You ready? The first place I want you to look at is Haiti. Haiti. You know where Haiti is? Where is Haiti? It's in the Caribbean, okay? Who was the first European to set eyes on the island which Haiti is part of? I'll give you a clue. He set sail in 1492 on the ocean sort of blue. Christopher Columbus. Very good. And it was interesting, because write this down. That island, which is called Hispaniola, it's always fascinating because eventually it's going to end up being controlled by two European countries. Spain, what is now the Dominican Republic, and then the western half will be controlled by France, and that's going to be called Haiti. So write that down. We're talking about the western half of that island. Spain's got the eastern part, and let me see if I can actually find that over here. Here we go. What ultimately will become the Dominican Republic, which is famous for a number of things, including a lot of really good baseball players come from the Dominican Republic, probably more so than like any other singular place. And then here's Haiti. Okay? Haiti, controlled by the French. And the French would use it, I don't know, if you figure this out, what would Europeans do? And Spain had some colonies in the Caribbean. France, Haiti was their big one. The English had Jamaica and Barbados and so forth. What was one of the biggest economic things that they did in those Caribbean colonies?
Utilize slave labor.
For what purpose?
Cotton.
No, not cotton.
Tobacco.
Some tobacco. Sugar was a big one. Yeah, sugar cane production and so forth. Remember in the movie Amazing Grace, and they would talk about like, you know, how they had a boycott on sugar back in Britain because they were trying to like, you know, talk about all the harshness of slavery and so forth. In Haiti, there was a lot of slaves. Write this down. There was a lot of slaves. In fact, in a lot of the Caribbean colonies, there was a lot of slaves. In the English colonies that became the United States of America, which colonies, states had the most slaves? The South. Yeah, you remember, yeah. Virginia, Georgia, North South Carolina. Maryland, Delaware, they had a lot of slaves. He was the very first European. So he arrived at that island, and then, long story short, they divided it between France and Spain. Okay? I mean, I don't want to get into all the particulars and so forth, but the Spanish kept the Dominican Republic, what became the Dominican Republic, eastern half, and France has got the western half. All right, here we go. Now, just to give you some details here, the number of slaves that were needed for those very lucrative plantations that grew lots of sugar, among other things, but mostly sugar, 10 to 1. Write that down. The ratio of slaves to Europeans was 10 to 1. You got that? You need a lot of slaves to grow the sugar, to cut down the sugar, to process the sugar into molasses, and which ultimately you can process that into sugar cane. You can take those off. Okay? Yeah, there we go. Okay? 10 to 1. Yes, question?
No, because you said you can process molasses, but you can then turn it in. I thought you were going to ask the question.
Or you can turn it into rum.
Yeah.
Okay, which is something that you probably wouldn't be putting into like your tea if you're like serving it to like a little kid or something like that. Those are all like sugar cane based derivatives. Rum, molasses cookies, yeah.
So you said the ratio of slaves to what?
Europeans. Yeah. Okay? So, in other words, if you were to go to like Georgia, South Carolina, and so forth, and what is the ratio? What was the percentage actually about African American slaves in those states? Anybody know? Are we talking about 10%, 20, 30? It's about 30. Yeah, some places it's a little bit more, some a little bit less. In the northern states, did you have a lot of African Americans? No, not too many. Many slaves? Hardly at all. And literally, shortly after the American Revolution, you didn't have any in the north. But in Haiti, 10 to 1. Write it down. And those slaves, they're slaves. From Africa, not treated very well. 1791, write this down. In 1791, this man and others, Toussaint Louverture, leads a rebellion. A slave rebellion against the French. Now let's look at this. In 1791, when this Haitian Revolution got started, the slaves are rising up against their masters. Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of slaves rising up against a smaller number of masters. And of course, do the slaves have lots of weapons compared to the masters? Not too many. I mean, do they just hand out weapons to slaves? No. I mean, but it's kind of like, think of it this way. Let's say, let me see if we can do the ratio here. Let's say here are your masters. There's 3 of them. The rest of y'all are slaves. They got guns. How are you going to do this? I mean, you literally, if you're going to like try and take them down, you're going to get off a shot. Maybe you'll get off another shot and so forth. So you'll go down, but the rest of them, boom, 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 boom.
Can I ring France?
Good question. All right, let's put this down. Shh, you ready? Here we go. In 1791, I needed a volunteer. Eric, you're a good volunteer on this one. Gary, you're a good volunteer and so forth. I'm going to ask you this time. In 1791, I haven't even asked the question yet, and you're obviously volunteering to answer it. That's pretty good. Are you ready to answer the question? You ready? Whatever the question is? Okay, what's your favorite color? Okay, I got another question for you, because don't write that down unless you want to. What was going on in France in 1791? Was it like, we got our thing together, everything's going well, we're going to crush that slave rebellion, or was it kind of chaotic? Very good, write that down. 1791, France was in a situation of chaos. Okay, it was like the reign of terror. Things are not real stable. They're cutting off people's heads left, right, and center. It's not a real stable situation. So as far as a good time to actually try a slave rebellion, it's a good time, because France is not in a great position to come and help. Do you understand? Okay? France is like not really got it quite together. In fact, write this down. You ready? Haiti will win. The slaves will win. It's going to take them a while. Hold on. 1708. You can see that the Haitian Revolution is going to take a while. 1708. Excuse me. Thank you very much. You guys are so good at this, right? I mean, yeah, I can't give you the wrong century, can I? Vinny would have caught me on that one too. Yeah, if I said 1708 was the end of the Haitian Revolution that started in 1791, you'd be like, what is this, like, Back to the Future or something? Correct. 1804. Oh, 4. Throwing all kinds of numbers at you. 1804. Toussaint Louverture, the slave rebels will win. Question. They were not happy being slaves. It was not pleasant. Are you talking about the treatment of the slaves? Oh, yeah, well, before they actually introduced, I told you that last time, before they introduced the guillotine, yeah, once they introduced the guillotine, you get a clean chop every time. Gravity does that. So you're talking about sometimes they would, like, slice off the ear? Ooh, that's nasty. Ooh, nasty. Nasty. No, I don't want to get into all the details and so forth of, like, punishment and so forth, but sometimes they didn't want to actually, like, kill you cleanly and quickly, especially if you were a commoner. They wanted to kill you slowly for the crowd's entertainment and for your torture and for the message to everybody else, as in, don't try to do whatever this guy did. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's why in our Constitution, when we got started in our country, we're like, well, let's try the 8th Amendment. No cruel or unusual punishment. It might be entertaining. It might be unusual. It might be really painful and torturous, but we're not going to do it. Okay? So can we carry out the death penalty in our country today? Yes, you'll find this out next year. According to the Supreme Court, yes. But can we do it in such a way that you're like sent electric volts through you, slowly frying you to death? No, because that would be cruel and unusual. It's going to be something less torturous. Does that make sense? Okay? All right, so here we go. Put this down. Guess which country? Guess which country actually is sort of like, hey, France, you suck. We're actually going to sort of even help Haiti gain independence, although it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you don't necessarily always want to help a bunch of slaves win a war. It was Britain, write that down, with a little bit of help from Britain. Okay? They took advantage because they're like, that was France's big foothold in the Caribbean. It's actually interesting because once France lost the Caribbean, they're like, oh, forget it. Really? Oh, forget it. We lost Haiti. We'd lost Canada before that. Woe is us. We thought we were going to do something in the Americas. In fact, here we go. Raise your hand. Listen very carefully. You can look up at my presidents now. I've got my presidents up there. One of our presidents made a deal with Napoleon. Napoleon was fighting a big war with European powers in the early 1800s. And this president was like, hey, Napoleon, you contacted me. You want to like get some money from the United States? Well, we're not interested in just giving you money for your war. Sorry about that. Napoleon's like, no, really. We want to sell you some land in North America because we're not interested in developing our real estate interests in the Americas anymore. We lost Haiti, we lost Canada, and we've got this big, huge area west of the Mississippi River. Very good. The Louisiana Purchase. Have you ever heard of that before? Yeah. The Louisiana Purchase. Which president in the early 1800s was the president who said to Napoleon, we'll make a deal? Okay, I'll get Congress to go along with this later on and so forth. Which president? Nope, a little bit before that. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson made that deal. And then after he's like, somebody like, you just spent how much on what? West of the Mississippi? And he's like, hey, we got these plans. So like, we got everything up to the Mississippi, so we might as well go from the Mississippi. We bought it. We can go really, really far. Raise your hand if you can tell me, who did Jefferson bring into the White House to say, okay, you guys got a job here. Make sure you don't get lost. Make sure you bring somebody, maybe a Native American named Sacagawea, who can help you not get lost. I want you to go and take a look at this land that I just bought. They were not brothers, but they were friends. Have you heard of, to everyone together, Lewis and Clark? Did they go through Idaho? Well, of course, I don't know. Yes, they did. And who from that party of Lewis and Clark was actually from Idaho originally? Thank you very much. Okay? Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was from the Shoshone tribe. Oh my gosh, that goes way back to Virginia. Oh my gosh. Get your Native American people in history like straight. Yeah, that was like the Virginia colonial thing. So anyway, yeah. So Napoleon sold the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. Thank you very much. And why? Because he's like, I need the money to fight a war in Europe, which is going to end up being very bad for me, but whatever. You know, you do whatever you want with your money. And and part of the reason is because they'd already lost Haiti. You got that? All right, now, we got the Haiti part down. Now, let's go to the next one. And it's going to get more complicated here. Okay? One other thing, actually, hold on. Yeah, actually, let's get back to Toussaint Louverture. Just put this down. In case you didn't know, what was the first American country to gain independence? 3 letters. In no particular order. S-A-U. Thank you very much. USA. Number 1. First one. What was the second American country to gain independence? Haiti. Very good. Is there much difference between the two? Oh my gosh, yeah. George Washington, was he a slave owner or a slave rebel leader? Slave owner. So in the Haitian Revolution, put this down. There's going to be really concerned. You can have a revolution, but who is going to lead it? That's going to be very interesting as we go through. How many more revolutions are going to be going through? Oh my gosh, how many more countries are going to become independent? What the heck? When we finally go through all the Latin American countries that are going to be independent, we're going to look at a whole bunch of ones in the Caribbean, Central America, South America, bing, 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 bing. And which country had most of those colonies? I'll give you a clue. If you go next door, you can speak the language that they speak in a lot of those countries in Latin America. Spain, yeah. The exceptions are, yeah, in the Caribbean you had British Jamaica, British Barbados, I think, French Haiti, but most of them, Cuba, Spanish, okay? Mexico, Spanish. Argentina, Spanish. Brazil, very good. You guys are paying attention. Yes?
But the Central American ones, they weren't all different independent states. They were like that FRC.
We're going to get into the details of it. It's kind of crazy, right? This is what we're going to be focusing on here and the next time. It's kind of a crazy thing because, I mean, hello. Once the United States of America became independent, we didn't break apart into other different parts, did we? Did we? Not really? What do you mean, not really? Did the United States ever try to break apart over, I don't know, some issue like slavery? What was that war called? Civil War. North, South, Blue, Gray. Union, Confederacy. Who won? We did. I love that. We did. We did. Said the people from where? North. Yeah, like Idaho was a state and during the Civil War. We were a territory. Who created Idaho as a territory? Thank you very much. Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States during the Civil War. It was the only state that was created, ultimately the state that was created as a territory during his presidency. Woo. Yeah. But put this down. Go ahead and write this down. Some of the other countries that will exist in the early stages of the revolutionary independence movement are going to break apart. In fact, some of them are going to be like, whoa, you really broke apart. What a mess. They're going to break apart into different parts. Like what we now think of as Mexico, it originally started out with a bunch of the Central American countries, like Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. It's okay, you don't have to write them all down right now. You will eventually. But they were part of that original country. And in fact, here's one. Did you guys know this? When Mexico was first created, it was a lot bigger. It was like 1/3 bigger. Like who took the northern third of Mexico? We did. We got into a war with them, and who won? We did. And what did we insist upon as a result of that victory? Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, the northernmost border of Mexico would be the southern border of Idaho. To cross to Mexico, you would go to the southern border of Idaho. Utah was in Mexico. Nevada was in Mexico. California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, they were all in. Texas was in Mexico. Yes?
For a while.
For a while.
Which president was in the... What's it even called? The American-Mexican War?
We'll get to that actually next unit. We're going to, yeah. The Mexican-American War occurred during primarily the time of like Tyler, Polk. Taylor wasn't one of the generals during it. Okay, here we go. Look at that guy. Isn't that sweet? Here we go. Write it down. That's King Ferdinand. He's Ferdinand the Seventh. Shh. He is Fernando. Okay, here's what you need to know. When Napoleon was doing his thing and conquering this, that, and everything, he was the king of Spain. Okay, and he's going to be an important person as we go through telling about the history of Spain. Why are we talking about the history of Spain? Because the history of Spain is going to impact the history of Spanish territories in the Americas. Okay? When he became king, Spain had all of its territories in the Americas. Okay? By the time he is no longer king, they will be in the process of losing almost everything. In fact, I want to go ahead and tell you this. When Spain loses almost everything, I'll tell you the parts they hung on to. You think you know?
Yeah.
There's two parts.
One of them is the Philippines.
In the Americas, you're right. They held the Philippines over there.
In the Americas? Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, yeah, because one of
I know one of them.
One of them might become a state in the United States of America, and right now it's a territory. PR. Puerto Rico, very good. You can make note of that, Puerto Rico. Write this down. Spain will control Puerto Rico until the end of the 1800s. And then who's going to beat them in a war called the Spanish-American? Oh, well, I guess that's us. The Spanish-American War, the end of the 1800s. And there's one other island area that the Spanish will hold on until that war. Cuba. Very good, Cuba. And that will become an independent country. You can see Cuba right on the to the right of the United States of American flag right there. Cuba Libre, Cuba Freedom. Okay, got that? Those two, not ironically, in fact, go ahead and write this down. Those two are going to be remaining part of Spain, and here's actually the reason why they were. Go ahead and write this down. Cuba and Puerto Rico, when all the other parts are becoming independent, we're going to get into the details of that. Cuba and Puerto Rico, they're both Caribbean islands. What kind of things are going on economically on those Caribbean islands? A lot of plantations, sugar production, tobacco production, a lot of slaves in Puerto Rico and Cuba. Figure this out. What do you think Spain is going to make sure that they put into Cuba and Puerto Rico after Haiti had a successful slave rebellion? Do you think they're going to send over some people to make sure that there's not a successful slave rebellion in Cuba and Puerto Rico? Very good. Write that down. Spain is going to send over a lot of soldiers to make sure there's not a successful slave rebellion in Cuba and Puerto Rico. So will there be a successful rebellion in either of those two areas? No. Who's ultimately going to wrest Cuba and Puerto Rico away from the clutches of Spain by the end of the 1800s? The United States. I just told you, the Spanish-American War fought during the time of William McKinley, number 25. And we'll say to the Cubans, you can have your own country. We'll say to the Puerto Ricans, I think we're going to hang on to you guys for a while. And it's been kind of in a limbo ever since. Are you going to be a country? Are you going to be a state? Are you going to be a territory? Country, state, territory, country, state, territory? We'll see. Okay? Yeah.
It was just the Philippines during that war, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Okay? And that'll be something that's going to be covered at the beginning of junior year. Yeah. So here we go. Poor old King Fernando. What is going to happen when Napoleon's French armies come charging through into Spain in 1808? He is defeated. Now, write this down. He's defeated, but he's put into safety. All right? So he's not killed. He's just like sent off. In fact, I can't even remember if he's like there or he escapes to some other place. And anyway, he's not in charge of Spain in 1808, which creates a really interesting situation. Because, listen carefully, if the Spanish king, who was in charge of Spain and was in charge of the Spanish colonies, got that? If the Spanish king is in charge of Spain anymore, who's in charge of the Spanish colonies? This is an interesting question. Let's look at one category, because I was going to ask that. Do you think if Napoleon, or his brother, together, the French are in charge of Spain, is Napoleon therefore in charge of all of that Spanish territory in the Americas? Would he like to be? Yes. There are two countries. I want you to write this down. There are two countries that are going to say to Napoleon, you may have captured Spain, but forget about having control of all of those Spanish colonies in the Americas. Who do you suppose that might be? Tyler? Ty, tell me one or both of the countries that will say to France, don't even think about trying to take control of the Americas. I'll give you a clue. One of them has got a really big sense about itself. The other one's got a really big navy. U.S. is the first one. The United States. You can write that down. The United States is like, hey, France, don't come over here. Yeah. like really, we had an army and a navy to really stop Napoleon from coming over and doing anything. We were happy just to buy some of his territory, in the Louisiana Purchase. And who was the other country that was like, France, you just stay over on this side of the Atlantic because we got a navy and we're not going to let you go through. Perfect, right? You got both. Britain. Write that down. Britain is going to say, forget about it, Napoleon. You may have a really powerful army to mess with in the continent of Europe, but your navy is not going to be able to tangle with us. So therefore, don't think about trying to conquer what is over on the other side of the Atlantic. Does that make sense? Okay, now, this is where things are going to get kind of interesting, because Fernando, when he is out of power, who is going to be in charge in the Americas? The Mask of Fernando. Write it down. I'm serious. Write it down. The Mask of Fernando. You're like, what are you talking about? The Mask of, I see it's on there. The Mask of Ferdinand or the Mask of Fernando. This is a soccer player. Apparently he's got Fernando. So when I looked this up on Google, I got this image. And I'm like, okay, maybe he's trying to protect his nose or something from a hit by a soccer ball. Any of you guys play soccer? I mean, that could be kind of bad on your nose and so forth. Either one. Fernando is Spanish. Ferdinand is like what we would call him, right? Because don't you guys all have different names and so forth when you go into the Spanish room? You don't? Okay, well, anyway. Yeah, anyway. So, here's the deal. This is what you need to write down. You ready? Were there people in the Spanish-speaking colonies that were pretty darn important? Think back to who were the pretty darn important people in the Spanish colonies. Who are the pretty important people? Because they're going to step in. You ready? I'm going to tell you. These people are going to step in, and they're going to go, well, Napoleon's not going to come over here with his ship. And our king, we don't know where he is. He's lost. We are going to rule in his name. In fact, write that down. We'll find out who these people are. We are going to rule these Spanish colonies in the name of Ferdinand, in the name of Fernando, as in they are holding up a little mask This is where I need my clicker. So